Welcome, everyone. Happy International Day. This 8th of March, we are celebrating and encouraging diversity and inclusion in the workplace. My name is Denise, and I will be your host today. I will briefly tell you something about TOPFEM and then about the speakers who are with us today. TOPFEM was founded in 2011 to give young, ambitious women an inspiring place outside the work and study. The purpose of TOPFEM is for young, ambitious women to help each other to reach the top. In order to accomplish this, we offer a mentor program, exclusive events, and workshops. Today, you are with us at one of our events, and this is called The Road to Inclusion Within Business. As you can see, there are three ladies sitting here next to me. Those are Marita Bruning, Benas Asodolahi, and Hilde Mulder. And I want to ask you, would you like to introduce yourselves? And also, what do you do for your professional activities? I'm also curious to know what developments you have seen in recent years in the field of diversity and inclusion within the workplace. What challenges have we overcome? And what changes have we seen along the way? Marita, I'm starting with you.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for your wonderful kickoff. You're doing great. Welcome. My name is Marita Bruning. Introducing myself, where to start? I'm a mom of two kids who were just in the building, so that was a bit stressful. I still have to level a bit. I am an expert on the field of diversity, inclusion, and equity, and I have a background in cultural anthropology. Started my career in social work. Why? Well, I grew up in Oostzaan, which is a small village near Amsterdam, in a very privileged and white environment. And when I was 5 years old, my parents decided to open our house for people with a different story than my story. For children from unsafe situations, pleegkinderen, we call it in Dutch, and for people with a refugee background. So from a young age, I came to listen to a lot of different stories and met a lot of different people. And when I grew a bit older, I came to realize that we do all have our own story, but we're not all seen and heard the same way. So this became my purpose in my career to work on that everyone is seen and heard in the same equal way. So I've been working for several organizations. At a certain point, I ended up in Belgium. I met the love of my life there. So yeah, that's how life goes. And after we decided to go back to the Netherlands, I was asked by ABN AMRO to join their D&I team. So I worked here on the Zuidas for 4 years. And after 4 years, I thought, now it's time for something new. It was a really interesting time for me because I really learned how the corporate world is working on this topic. Also learned how to speak the corporate language, which can be really helpful and open doors. And also I learned a lot about myself, and not always in a very easy way, because I also felt that my power, which is amongst other things, my softness, my femininity, was sometimes hard to stay true to myself when you hear quite often, you're a bit too sensitive for this environment. I learned a lot, and really grateful for the time I had there. And then I started as a self-employed entrepreneur. So now I help large companies, but also smaller organizations to become more diverse and inclusive. And you had 3 questions, but can you please repeat them? Like
what are your professional activities?
Yeah.
What have we seen along the way? What did improve over the last 10 years?
Yeah, well, I think that the topic has become more and more on top of mind. And I think that we still have a lot of differences in terms of awareness, space and also action. I mean, in the end, it's about what you do, not about what you say you're doing. But I think also due to the murder on George Floyd, the discussion around Zwarte Piet here in the Netherlands, the attention for the position of women, and many other things, and many people, many activists also, who really put a lot of effort and energy on keep repeating the message. And I think those are really the, how do you say it in English, the lichtdragers, the people that really pave the way. So I think there's it's a positive story, but I think there's also still a lot to learn. And for me, that's mostly about becoming more self-reflective. And then I'm talking about, let's call it the dominant norm, because I feel that D&I is too often about otherness. It's about certain people who are different and have to fit in. And for me, that's not what it's about. It's about really embracing diversity and really listening, and also be aware of the position that you have in this story, and the privileges that you have. And we all know the position of the dominant, and we all know the position of the other. But a lot of people are way more often in the position of the other. And I think for the people who find themselves more often in the position of the dominant, it's really important to be aware, to listen to stories of the others, so to say, and to really put that into action within your own circle of influence. And that's not only within the board, that's not only within HR, that's everywhere in the organization, and everyone has a circle of influence where you can do something. Is that an answer to your question?
Yeah, it is. And
keep
I
talking.
heard you say that you can look inside yourself. Can you give an example of that? So what can you do to make sure you listen to other people?
Yeah, well, I think that's not always easy, but to become better at it, you have to listen more. Yeah. I think the more stories you know, the more different people you know, the more natural it becomes to you. And I think you always have something to learn for everyone. And I'm not saying that it's easy, and I'm not saying that it will be finished one day. I think it's an ongoing thing, like forever. And it's more not, it's also about the person that you want to be in this world. It's not about it's also reflects in the way that you do your business, but it's more about how do you give meaning to people, and how is that reflected in the way you do your business. So for me, the core of the E&I is people. And also, how are we human together? And what is how do you add to that? What's your story?
And I heard you say you have 2 young children.
True.
What message do you give them in this topic?
I give them a lot of messages. Yeah, well, this morning I had a nice conversation. I have a boy who is 6, Manuel, and a girl, she's 3, Lucy. And Lucy is 3, and she sometimes says, Mama, I'm a boy. And I say, okay, wait, it's fine. You are who you are, like you feel. And Manuel was saying, yeah, Mama, people are who what they feel like. And quite often he says these things where I'm like, oh, yes, yes. Even, one time he asked me, we saw a woman talking on television, and he asked me, why is that her name? And I said, well, because her mom and dad liked the name. And he said, no. Or her mom or dad and dad. And I really love these moments. So, I think as a parent, not only in this topic, but in every topic, you're always trying your best, and you make a lot of mistakes, and so do I. But I really hope that for my kids, what I would love is if they really love themselves, and from that place being able to give space to others and love others. I think that's the most important. Also, that's self-love. I believe that a lot of trouble come from people not really loving themselves. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
Benas, do you want to tell us something about yourself?
Thank you. My name is Benas. I'm 37 years old. I'm also a mom of two kids, two daughters, Lila May and Nia Noor. And I've been working for 15 years in corporate industries in different sales and management positions. I'm also married. Let's not forget it because my husband is probably watching me on live stream. I'm married. I live in Leiden, where I host my own coaching business. After 15 years of corporate experience, I decided to quit my job and to start my own business. And what I do now is coach women in corporate industries finding their authentic selves, finding their authentic way of leading. And I do not regret my choice a day or a second. I experience so much fulfillment by helping other women. So that's what I do, basically. And why am I here today? Because I know how it feels like to be the only person of color in a room. I know how it feels like to be the only woman in a management team. And I also know how it feels like when someone comes into your department asking for the secretary and see the surprise in their eyes when they find out that you're not only not the secretary, but you're the manager of the department. So these are very awkward feelings that I know how it is, and I would like to raise more awareness, and that's why I'm here today. The second question was...
What challenges have we overcome and what did we see along the way?
Yeah, so we come from an era where industries mainly were dominated by white male. And what I see is that due to technological developments, but also globalization, people are more and more connected with each other. So basically what we see in the workplace is people working under the same roof, not even speaking the same language. So companies become more and more aware of the importance of diversity. And with quota criteria, they try to improve the diversity in workplace, but attracting diverse people in your company doesn't make you an inclusive company. So, and I think that's where a lot of companies fail, is that they put a lot of attention in the diversity part, but not really giving an inclusive place to work. So the questions that we need to ask companies is, do you have 50% of your people being a woman, and how many of them actually are in management positions? Or do you have a good representation of people of color in your company, but all of them work in the same department? These are questions that reveal true diversity and inclusion within companies.
And I heard you also say that you have two children, two daughters.
Yes.
Give you what lessons do you give them?
Also a lot, but to be true to themselves. That's the most important message that I can give them. That at the end of the day, they have to be able to watch themselves in the mirror and to make sure that they are always honest to themselves in everything they do.
And have you a nice or a fun example from when they surprise you, when they listen to you?
I wish I could say that they listen to me, but well, sometimes my youngest one, I always tell them that they have to be proud of who they are and that they have to take their space. And sometimes my youngest daughter enters the room and then she says, "Hallo, hier ben ik." And I find it so funny that she feels so comfortable in her own body. And yeah, that makes me really proud. I know this sounds really dumb if you're not a mom, but you two might understand.
No, it's so nice to hear that. Hilde.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Hilde. Let me tell you shortly a little bit about my professional life and also about my linkage with the topic we're talking about today. Well, maybe not so originally, but I also have young children, three, a boy, Max, two ladies, Elisa and Noah. They're still very young, 4, 5, and 7. So a lot of busy at work and busy at home. I made some endeavors along my professional life. I started off as a professional violinist. So the first 25 years of my life were basically about, maybe kind of top sport, practicing the violin for 8 to 10 hours a day, I guess, studying in Amsterdam and also a while in St. Petersburg. Nowadays we look a little bit differently maybe to some aspects of that country, but from a cultural and historical perspective, it was great to have taken on board that experience. Then at the age of 25, I had some personal circumstances, losing my mom and starting to think I want to do something with my head rather than with my heart for a while. So I entered an agency, uitzendbureau, and asked them basically, is there something like a job? Because you have to imagine that if you're only practicing the violin and I never had to work on a laptop or something like that. So I really had to start off from scratch, doing things that I find now kind of normal. So then I started working at Achmea in an administrative job, and then moved on, embarked on a journey of some 8 to 10 years combining studying and working. So I worked for 8 years at ING and NN Group after finishing law studies as a legal counsel. Then changed to Ordina, small cap IT listed company in the middle of the Netherlands, as general counsel, so heading the legal team, which was a small legal team, but still covering all the legal topics. So that was also in a way out of the comfort zone. And then since June last year, I changed again and I moved to Deloitte. So I haven't quite recently joined since the 1st of June last year. Also as a general counsel, so I'm heading the internal legal team of Deloitte Netherlands, covering all legal aspects that come across, basically. And then in I think October, November, I came across two gentlemen from the support departments of Deloitte, asking me, well, basically, what do you find about the topic of IND, DNI? Do you want to be an ambassador for Deloitte support? And then I thought, okay, what is this topic about? We heard some aspects already from the ladies next to me. I said, okay, I feel that I can only contribute really to this topic if I kind of internate this, so let me have a walk on it. I had 2 or 3 walks on it, and then I thought, yes, but I actually have some connection with this topic, and it's maybe not the traditional connection, but I definitely resonate with the values that I connect very strongly with this topic, and that is about be open-minded, be transparent, be inclusive, and maybe let me elaborate a little bit on that. That has been the case because I have embarked on a journey, I think so 7 years ago, and it's also about inclusiveness. When my son Max was born and appeared not to follow the traditional path of being able to walk, being able to talk, because simply he was diagnosed with a very rare genetic disease. So he's in a wheelchair, and we embarked on a journey. How can we make the glass is half full, and how can we make everything possible from the ordinary life? So he is he has been, and he is to date still my teacher and mentor in making everything possible, because I think everything is possible as long as there is a willingness from everyone involved to adapt and to see, okay, maybe you have a different need or you have different abilities than I have, but I want to adapt. I see that every day when he goes to a playground with other children. He cannot just walk on the stairs to go from the slides. Then the other children say, okay, let's do something different, let's go walk, and they walk along with him. So I think it's, for me, it's a different angle, and for me it's also, you can fill in women, you can fill in different backgrounds. It applies for everyone in a slightly different way, but the values and the things that I associate with this team still are very much true. And to get back to your second question, I think you can easily draw the parallel with society and what is the journey that we all. I think it started off looking at it from a topic we need to address. Oh, there are not. We need to do something about gender diversity. Oh, let's hire females and make sure that we hit this. Rather, to today, seeing it as a journey that we need to embark on and try to think out of the box, rethink, realize that you are you with your own perspective, but it is not necessarily the only perspective, and your need is not necessarily the need of another, and try to be open-minded and really try, and as you said, it's not always easy, but realize that the fact that it isn't easy probably says something about the way we have to walk.
Yes, and have you seen some specific challenges along the way within business?
Yes, because I think it's when you come to practice what you preach, then you will encounter the challenges, and then you will find out, okay, it's not only about hitting targets or numbers, it's also about how do we work together, how do we make things work even when it's not. We will all recognize, I think, that with one colleague the cooperation will go very smooth, and with other colleagues you have to make an effort. I think that's the same when it comes to inclusiveness.
Yes. May I have the mic?
Yeah.
Thank you for these insights. Next, we're going on to some statements, and I want all your opinions on that. The first one is, we should focus on diversity first before inclusion because we are simply not there yet. Benas, would you like to start?
Yes. I think that diversity is the outcome of inclusion. So without being inclusive in an organization, putting effort in diversity doesn't really make sense, because people with diverse backgrounds or who deal with diversity will leave eventually if they do not feel seen and heard. So therefore, I think that we start with inclusion and then diversity will follow naturally. To give you an example, I spoke the other day with someone who works for almost 10 years in a corporate company, in the same company. He's born and raised in the Netherlands, but he's a Muslim. And he said the last 5-6 years I have seen so many diverse people coming into the company, so he feels represented in a way, but he doesn't feel inclusive. And I asked him, could you give me one example? He said, yeah, I can give you 10, but I will give you one example that makes me feel non-inclusive. And this happens every year with Christmas. He received this Christmas box, kerstpakket, filled with non-halal snacks, with alcohol and liquor. And he said, this is a gesture from the company, but every year I'm throwing away most of it because I don't drink and I don't eat non-halal snacks. And this is something very easy to adjust to from a company perspective. But him receiving it every year without any change makes him feel unseen and not included. So it's a very simple example. And yeah.
Can you describe what an employer can do to make the people
Well, with this example, I think there are many ways to give a Christmas box to your employees without making them feel uncomfortable or unseen. So it doesn't have to be food, but it can be. I can imagine that there are maybe halal kerst boxes. I don't know. I've never looked into it. But the idea that someone is very open about his religion and receiving for 10 years these boxes, yeah, well, I think as an employer, you should have been able to approach this from a different angle.
I think if I can add to it, I think it's also the ability to create such a safe environment that even if the employer does not come naturally to see this, that the employee feels safe and appreciated to give this input, because that is also
Absolutely.
what I find difficult or challenging. Something you can have your ideas and try to improve, etc., but at the same time, you are you with your perspective, and you don't necessarily, okay, with this example maybe yes, but not always you will know apparently the needs of one another. So it's also a loop of two ways, I think.
Definitely.
And a responsibility together to make sure that the interaction is there.
Yeah, and I think that inclusion is about the effort of the entire company, of all members. So creating a culture where people can actually speak up and be be honest and be their true selves. It's important to actually, share these things.
Yeah, to add to that, I totally agree to what you are saying. And to add to it, I think companies need to understand that it's not a matter of choice. It's about people. It's about equal opportunities, and it's about everyone feeling safe, seen, and heard. And also, I feel that companies who really understand the topic understand that they have to focus on it to stay relevant as well, also for the future. It's also for future employees, young people who get to companies are really curious to know, what do you do on this topic? They are looking for purpose in their work. And also, if you look at the business side of it, how inclusive are you for your customers and in your products and in your services? How many people in society can relate to the things that you do and the things that you offer? So I think the smart companies understand that it's, I think it's clear for me that this is really a human theme, and like it's in my whole being. But there's also a clear business side to it. And that is also a human side, because you want people also to feel seen and heard in everything that you deliver. And it also the example that you just, I really recognize this example. I once had at ABN AMRO, a person who came to me, who told me he just started working, or they just started working within the company in one of the offices. And then you have to choose your company clothing. And this person had to choose between a female or a male package. But it was a non-binary person. So that's not a really nice way to start your career. From the beginning, you don't feel seen or heard. And I was really happy when I gave a phone call to the person who was responsible for this. She immediately understood and she changed it. So now you can mix and show up as yourself. But it's all these moments in an employee journey and in everyday life that add up to the way that people feel that they really belong and that they can be themselves, and also can add value. Because it costs a lot of energy if you're not seen and heard. You get really unhappy. So yeah, there's so many aspects to it. So I still find it really interesting that there are companies who don't see this as a priority. How often do you hear, D&I is not a top priority now? I'm like, this should be your number one top priority. It reflects in everything you do. So yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Well, that was statement one. And you made a great bridge to the next statement because you had it. You talked about the clothing, and that is something that employers put out into the world. It's like content, the D&I content. And the statement is D&I content is more marketing than action. Hilde, would you start on that?
Well, I think there are examples of, for instance, pinkwashing is also a phenomenon, etc. So I think there is basically all drills down to, are you authentic as a company, cascading your message on this? And like you say, is it, do people believe the message, and do you practice what you preach? And or is it just a nice way of putting in something without really incarnating it, and also giving follow up and basically practicing what you preach. So for me, and that's what I also found. I can really say, although my period with Deloitte has been relatively short, but what I really appreciated since the moment I embarked, that I had different experiences on this. The relevance of being able to be the true you, and just you is you and you is good enough. I really felt that from day one when I embarked here, and I have noticed with myself, and that's what I every day still find very inspiring to notice. As I said, I also had different experiences, that it unleashes an entrepreneurship and a power within yourself. That the whole thing, I don't recall who pointed it out, but the whole point of being able to add value because you just know that you're good enough, etc. I really feel that this message here has resonated. So for me, this is really all about: is it authentic? Is it really lived through? And is it true messaging?
And next question, a follow-up question. The Gay Pride Month or the Pride Month, the whole South-Oost, the location where we are today, is colored in every color available. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, again, I think I'm not so judgmental person in whether I would find that right or wrong. And for me, it's really, if I feel I resonate with, is it a true story? Is it, do I believe it? Do I have the feeling that this is authentic or not? And then if it's authentic, it can be many variations and still be the right thing.
Yes. Would you like something to add to that?
Yeah, I'm thinking of an example that I heard within a large company that I'm working for at the moment. They decided not to join Pride Month because their queer community said, first we have to fix things within our organization. And so, yeah, they listened to that advice. And I think that's a great example of being authentic, being self-reflective, listening to people who have the lived experience and the wisdom that comes with that. And I think, also here, I think, just as Hilde says, I don't want to be too judgmental, but I think we see differences. I think there are a lot of companies who do really hard work, and they also show it, and I think that's good. I mean, it also sets a good example. And at the same time, I also had a personal struggle with calling myself a D&I professional, because I feel that sometimes D&I is not used the way that it should be. You know, I was struggling with that. Like, is it D&I when you put a person of color in your commercial and then you're like done, or and your whole office is white? So yeah, I think it's a journey that we're on, and I think that it's important that we keep the conversation going. And there's different levels of awareness. Yeah.
Benas, you are a job coach. Do you have an example, or do you know a story about one who has noticed this? Like, I feel that the organization is more marketing than action on this point.
I do, actually. Um, I spoke with a woman the other day. She said that she was very surprised to see that the company where she works was hosting an event, a diversity event, I guess. Um, and it was very big in the media. So it was all on social media, and it also came into my timeline. But she wasn't even invited. And I asked her, how is this possible? It's an event for women in your company. How can you possibly not be invited? And she said, well, it was for a select group of women in my organization, but they made a whole fuss out of it. And she didn't feel included at the end of the day while she's working there. So I think the commitment should start internally before you speak externally. And when it's authentic, and it's true, then it's fine. But I do get the feeling that it's also a lot of time a marketing stunt. Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, thank you for this example. It proves that sometimes it is more marketing than action. Our next statement is diversity and inclusion should be a top-down approach where the management and the leaders within the company should set an example for the employees and the people who work there. How do you feel about this? And Marita, can I start with you?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think there's certain truth. Yes, it's really important that your board is, giving the right example. Without that, it becomes really difficult. Then you get the D&I work groups that work really hard, mostly consisting out of people who really experience the inequality themselves, and then it's still really not equal. So you really need a board, and you really need a good strategy that you can also translate to the business. I think that's important. The combination where you have a board that is really committed and that's really showing up, setting the right example, combined with a company-wide D&I strategy, but also translated to the business, so that people really understand what it means for their job, and that they also can add their own experience and their own, sometimes business line specific actions or thoughts. So I think it's really a combination. As I said before, it's not a topic that belongs to the board or to the HR department. And I think that's still something that we hear quite often. Yeah, and also because people don't really understand what it's about. It's so big. And then they think like, yeah, this is the responsibility of the board. And yes, it is. But it's also all our responsibilities. And it should be clear for people how they add to the broader strategy. And also that this, of course, that it's visible. I mean, if you have a male white board talking about how important E&I is, yeah. I mean,
Some steps to take.
What do you say?
Some steps to take.
Yeah, some steps to take. Yeah, you have this cartoon where you like see all these white men. I don't want to bash white men here, of course not. But I mean, this is what we see quite often. You see all these white men sitting next to each other, and there's a woman there for a job, and they're like, tell us, what do you add to the company? Yeah. So yeah, you have to see diversity as well. It has to be visible. Yeah. So something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, to add, indeed, it is a kind of top-down in the way that it has to resonate from the top, but it's also bottom-up, like you said, because it's again, board, a whole organization is connected in one ecosystem, and if you want to have that ecosystem to be inclusive, I think you need a two-way direction, crossing somewhere and making it a coherent story.
Thank you. I will go on to the next statement, and that is to feel people safe and in the environment, in the workplace. You have to avoid tension and conflict. Marita, can I start with you?
Again.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm just checking. Do you want to start? No? Okay. No. I think you never should avoid conflict and tension. I think diversity comes with tension, and that's the whole thing. I think it's really important. I love deep democracy, which is a method for listening to all the voices in the room, and also for adding all those voices to your decision making. And I think that tension is something that we need to embrace and should not walk away for. But I think it's really important to, in Dutch you say openhartig luisteren en vrijmoedig spreken. So to speak freely and with courage, so say everything you have to say and listen with an open heart. And I think for me that's like the core. And that also means that there can be tension. But no one said that more diversity is easier. More diversity is more difficult because you have more different perspectives. And you have a norm that has to be self-reflective. And who decides what the norm is and who has to adapt? And these are difficult questions that come with tension. And I think that's a good thing. Hilde also said it. It's good when it's not easy sometimes. It's not that it has to be difficult. But I think then you feel, how do you say it? Without wrijving geen glans. You need some friction. You need some tension, because then you know that there's something is changing. If it goes easy, probably the change will not be too big.
But I think also key there is whether the environment is safe, because tension has a negative. If the environment is not safe and you don't feel the sense of belonging, etc., then tension can be very negative and accumulate to something worse. But if the environment is safe, you feel appreciated, you can be your true self, and then yes, you have some tension because you're working on this, your experience this topic. Then tension is I think maybe even a pinpoint of the fact that you're effectively doing something about inclusion and diversity.
Yeah. So you say that safe environment is necessary to allow friction between the colleagues. And how do you describe a safe environment for the people within the organization? Benas, would you like to start?
Yeah. A safe environment, it's basically psychological safety. So people feel that they will not get humiliated when they speak up, or when they tell their own opinions. So it's really about feeling safe and trusting that you can say whatever you want. How do you create it? By empowering your employees to do things differently, take blunt decisions. If we talk about our hiring teams, for example, at the end of the day, people hire people who look like them because that's safe, that's what they trust. But if we make sure that people are allowed to make mistakes, then they can also take a different decision by choosing a candidate who is not maybe their first choice, and get more challenged there. Yeah.
Can either of you add something to that?
I think it's really well said. I agree with Benas. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
May I? And the next statement is that if a person is afraid to say their opinions, or is afraid to be humiliated, they feel not heard, and they eventually will go away from the organization. Do you agree with that? Hilde, would you like to start?
Basically, I think we touched upon it. If you don't feel heard, your voice isn't heard, you don't have the sense of belonging, clearly there has something gone wrong with the whole idea of an inclusive team or organization or whatever you want to plot there. And yes, if you don't feel a sense of belonging, like at home, you want to be part of something. You want to be able that you is you and you is good enough, so to speak. So whether it is at home, whether is it at the office, and if that is not the case, I think yes, it is a demonstration of that it is not an ecosystem where you feel part of, where you feel included. So the natural reflex will, in my eyes, be that this person will go away.
Yeah. Thank you. And the last one, regular assessments and tests within the organizations are necessary to make diversity and inclusion work. So the company has to test it yearly or bi-yearly to see if they are on the right direction, yes or no. And Benas, can I start with you?
Yeah. I think yes. I think we do not learn from experience, but we learn from reflecting on our experience. So especially when we talk about inclusion, I think feedback from our employees is the most valuable data that you can get. And we need the information. We need to know the actions that we do. Does it have impact, and what kind of impact? And also, when we hire people, what happens after we hire them? Do we value their opinion? Do we value their presence in the company? These are very valuable information that we need, and we need to measure. And it doesn't have to be a huge survey. It can also be, how do you call it? There's a pulse survey, so a small survey which you can do more often. Yeah, I'm a big fan of it.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think if you, like I earlier pointed out, I think if you have your own perspective, so you can have ideas, you can have a vision, you can have a strategy, again, from the board up down. But if you don't, you have your perspective. So it's very difficult to think about, okay, but what would be the perspective of the other? We know from experience we can learn, but the most valuable input, like you say, is just gather it and hope that you have a safe environment, that people feel free to share their thoughts and ideas and feel heard and know that their ideas will be taken into account. So one of the mission of the support IND Council is also to how can we activate the people that they, because otherwise it will be a one-way direction of good meant ideas suggesting to taking this topic further, but the honest answer is we need to do it together, because otherwise we will never create an inclusive workplace.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think a lot of companies still forget to do good exit interviews. And I think that's a great source to get to understand better why people leave your company. And with that also to understand better how inclusive you are. So I think that's still something that companies can do better. And also I think it's really important to gather data in your employee research, the way you do it with polls or whatever. But I think at the same time it's also important, and even more important, to on a daily basis, especially when you're in a position where you make a lot of decisions for the company and its people, that you listen and that you take the time to listen, and that you have an open door. So that's not like, oh, we do a poll now and let's see what. It's not only this, it's this. And I think that's important. So it has to be a combination, and I think that data is really important. But also let's say the negative data. Why do people leave your company? That's a great source, and a lot of companies don't listen to those voices.
The organization have to be open to that.
Yes,
feedback.
Of course. Yeah, but it's also a smart thing to do. I don't think that there's any company that likes to see their people leave. So yeah.
Well, thank you. It is now time for our 15-minute break, and we'll continue after the break. Thank you very much. welcome back. We just did a test with people who are with us today, and they answered some questions about the diversity and inclusion within their organization. We will share some answers, some questions with some answers with you, and what the three ladies have to say about these answers. The first question is, have you ever felt left out, or have you been treated unfairly because of the bias of someone else based on your age, gender, ethnicity, religion, disability, sexual orientation, education, neurodivergent of natural origin? And 83.3% of the group said yes. This is a high percentage. Ladies, what do we think about this?
I think it demonstrates it's an actual topic that we sit here for a reason, because it's because it's a topic which is alive and everyone encounters in daily life. That's what it says to me, basically.
Yeah, and it's shocking and at the same time not so surprising, I would say. Also because it's a room full of women. So yeah, and also because it's a lot of different angles in the question. And I think that we also shouldn't underestimate how much diversity there is within people. Also, if you look at neurodiversity, if you look at people with disabilities, it's more than 1 million people in the Netherlands. So yeah, but as Hilde said, still a lot of work to do. Yeah.
Benas, would you like to add something to that?
I think that the group who are here today do have a connection with this topic. So I'm not surprised by the percentage, but still it's quite a lot actually. Yeah.
Hope to get a lower percentage next year. And the second question was, do you feel uncomfortable expressing your opinions and ideas in a group setting? And 75% of our people today said yes. Does this surprise you?
No, it doesn't surprise me at all. This is basically also what I hear from coaches that I speak with. And these are all women in also higher position in companies. So I'm not surprised by the results, but I think there's quite a lot of work that needs to be done. And that the psychological safety that I mentioned before is not there yet. If we do not feel comfortable to speak out, then we have a long way to go.
Yeah, and it also makes me curious, if you feel uncomfortable, you can still speak out. But is that, I'm also curious to know that percentage. Like, and also I think it's a really human thing to feel uncomfortable sometimes in groups and to speak out, because we want to belong and we want to fit in. So when you experience, like in the previous question, quite often that you don't belong, then of course, it to me it's quite logical that you have moments where you feel uncomfortable to speak out because you're not seen and heard. So yeah, I think it's a clear what's the word? Correlatie? I don't know this word in English. Correlation. Oh, it's that easy. Okay, cool. Between those two questions. Yeah.
Hilde, would you like to add?
Much has been said already. I think it's a multi-layered answer, because I think inherent in all of us is a kind of uncertainty that we will all have, and there's the personal annotation to this. I think one person will more easily speak up in groups than another person, but at the same time, it's also, I think we will all have experience. Let me speak for myself. I have experienced that it does differ between group settings, how comfortable you feel. There's also the cultural aspect, because I think in some, I come from settings that was very, act normal, then it's crazy enough, is the Dutch saying. So then you're, then you're not so trained or to speak up. If because and it's also because maybe you also due to this uncertainty, and a lot of females have that in particular. We were making a joke before we entered this room that we expressed some uncertainty. We had a call previous. Maybe it's nice to share this. By the way, I didn't discuss this with you, but we had an introductory call last Monday before just getting to know each other a little bit, and then we shared some uncertainty on in this case it was about the English, I think, and then we said today we met each other again, and then we said, hey, this is actually kind of weird that we just met 10 seconds and we shared kind of uncertainty with each other, if you like. So I think we all have that, but apparently we felt safe to share that. So it's also about being able to be yourself and have the confidence that it's good enough. And I think this answer shows that in very many cases we can still not be our true selves.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think it's also really important to understand that we all have a role to play in others feeling comfortable to speak up. Also within the group of women, there's a lot of diversity within the group of women, and some of us are heard and seen more than others. And we should be intersectional also in that sense. We should take everyone along. And I just made a joke about a question that I like to ask very often, but I think it's a really important question. If you're discussing a topic and there's a certain la 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 la, like everyone is like on the same page, to ask the question, is there someone who has a really different sound? Is there a really different opinion in this? To also make space for that other opinion, and to see it as a positive thing. Because that's, of course, we didn't even spoke about it, but how rich it is to be diverse and to have all these different perspectives, also within your business, but also from a human perspective. And I think it's also important to go really proactively look for that and hear what that other sound is. So I understand that we all know as I said before, we all know the position of the dominant and the other. And sometimes we will find ourselves in a position where we feel uncomfortable to speak. But other times we're in the position where we can help others to speak up. So I think that's also really important, also in this International Women's Day, that it's about all women, and it's about all women having an eye for each other and helping each other. And also be aware of the differences within that we face, and that for some, these are their bigger challenges than for others. I think that's important.
Thank you. In the beginning of this event, we looked backwards, like what have we seen along the way? Now I want the question the other way around. What steps do we need to take in the future, in the near future and maybe in the further future? But what steps do still need to be taken?
Yeah, we touched upon it before, and I think it's a really broad question with a lot of answers, because it's a lot of things that add up to that feeling of feeling safe. And for me, I think what I find the most beautiful companies are the companies that are real. We don't know it yet. We are learning. We are trying. We're not diverse enough yet. And really place themselves in the position of the listener and the learner. And if you take it to the, let's say, a team meeting that you have, then it could also be wise to set some, call it rules. Like no one has a monopoly on the truth. We're here to learn from each other. We're here to grow together. And for that, we need everyone. So I think it's also important to really mention that.
And I also think that the leadership there has an important role to play, to be authentic, accessible, open, provide a listening ear, so that one feels that it does matter, and that you can express your opinion, and it's perfectly fine to have a differing opinion or disagreements, etc. But that it doesn't disqualify you as part of this group. I think there's also a very important role to play for leadership. I do think from a point of awareness, and if I started off with a very personal experience, and I do think that it does help to open your eyes sometimes if you in a learning or whatever format it is. But I do think it's all about realization that your truth is not the absolute truth, and that there are many perspectives that can easily exist next to each other. Not always perfect, not always easy, but it's about finding the common ground now, and it's a dynamic process. And yes, I think it starts with awareness from everyone, I think, and their learning would be a useful tool, one of many, I think.
To add to that, Hilda, I think leadership has a very important role, and in my 15 years of experience, I have never heard any manager or director say, I was wrong, I made a mistake. So by doing that, you open up and make sure that it's fine to make mistakes, and people feel more comfortable to do crazy things, blunt decisions. But this is really something that leaders need to create in the workspace.
I agree with that. It's also about feeling comfortable of showing your own vulnerability. That you're not perfect, that you are doing what you think is best, but hey, it's just what you think is best. It's not necessarily the absolute truth. So I agree with that, yeah.
Thank you for that question. Are there more questions from the audience? If you want to ask them now, it's possible for our panel. No? Okay. Then we go back to the first question. What steps still need to be taken in the near future, tomorrow, next week, next month? What steps are necessary to take to make the organization more diverse and inclusive?
We're so kind for each other. Waiting. Yeah, sisterhood. This is sisterhood.
So for me, the most important thing is awareness. So making sure people become aware of their own unconscious bias. And how do you do it? How do you make sure people change their bias if they're not even conscious about it? To give you an example, this morning I spoke with a lady who has a dark skin. She's a manager of a team, and they plan these team meetings external sometimes. And she told me that this happened a lot, that she's sitting in the meeting room waiting for her team to arrive, and then the host of the day or someone from the organization comes to chat with the manager, and they enter the room and they see her sitting there, and they go back because they cannot imagine that this lady is the manager of the team. And they always come back when the rest of the team arrives. This is so painful. Do I think that the guy who does it is an ass? No, he's not. He's just unconscious about his own bias. And what we can do is make sure people become conscious, and there are actually tests for it. I'm even biased. So I think everybody has it in them, and by doing tests, by offering this in companies, people become more aware of their own biases, and also understand more the impact of their own bias to other individuals. And I think that's the very first step we need to make.
Agree. I think also it's inherent to people that we put stickers, and we all do that in this room, because it's also a way of our brain of organizing all the data that comes across, right? So the tendency is logical and understandable, but I was the other day, I spoke also at an HR meeting, and then I also said exactly this: you need to be aware of your bias, stop for a moment, rethink, and then act. And if we can make that change, then I think we're moving steps forward.
Yeah, and I feel myself sometimes thinking, seriously, do we still have to talk about awareness? But of course, we still need to talk about awareness. And I think compassion is also a really important value when you're working on this topic for yourself and for people and where they are. And with the unconscious bias trainings, I feel you see it in the large companies, you see it a lot. And I think it's good, but I think it's very important that people understand how to work on their unconscious bias. And we are all biased. And the most important asset to work on your unconscious bias is to meet people who are different than you are. And to, sorry, there it is again, listen to their stories, so that you understand what other people experience, and that when you hear like the word disability, that you know who you're talking about. I used to work with young people with physical disabilities, and how often I matched them with companies, and how often I heard that the company, ooh, difficult. But then when one of these young people was telling their story, like, yeah, I had cancer when I was young, I still have my HBO diploma. This means that now at the moment I have less energy than my peers. But then you hear a story, and then this label becomes different in your head. Then you think of people. And I think that's most important, that you think of people when you talk about labels. And also, like we talked about diversity and inclusion, what comes first. We use these words like, diversity, inclusion, but it's about people. And it's about these stories. And that's something that we always, I think, so these trainings are important, but people will also have to be willing to act upon it. And that not everyone is. And I think that's also the way that it is. Yeah.
I'm closing off with a call to action. What can people do, small or big, to improve the diversity and inclusion around them? In a team, in a room, in the organization, what can one individual do to make an impact, small or big?
Be humble. Be humble. Have a realization, and like I said, rethink before you act.
Well, address bias when you witness it. So, to give the last example, when I was working in the corporate business, but still I hear this a lot from other ladies, when a woman gets a promotion to a senior position, a lot of men say things like, I'm not sure if she has what it takes. I don't know if she can pull it off. And address it when this happens. They never say these things about men getting promoted. It's always about women. So when you witness it, address it and say just something like, wow, I think you're being biased now just because she's a woman. And I know it's hard. I know it's really awkward to do it. But if you do not do it, then the person will not get conscious about his own bias. It will never happen if you do not say anything. So speak up. Please do.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think there's so many things that we can do in our own circle of influence, like really small things. Put your pronouns on your LinkedIn and in your email. because it's easy, because people know how to address you, but also you make clear, like, I know that there's other pronouns, and I pave the way, like, or I'm part of it, like I'm not the norm. But also when I'm invited to speak somewhere, I ask questions, and I think that's, for me, I would say ask questions. If I'm invited for a panel, who are the other people in the panel? I was interviewed by NRC on an article on inclusion. Who are the other people that you're interviewing? All people with my profile. I will provide names of people who have a different profile than I have. There's so many things you can do. Yeah, and also in my price, I work for large corporates. They pay full price. I work for NGOs. Sometimes they pay nothing or a lot less. That's also, for me, equality. Yeah, I think take the time to really think what is within your circle of influence, and it can be really small, and ask questions. Use your position to ask questions. Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any last thing you want to share with the public today on this topic? Of course.
Sorry, I had it before, but I didn't want to hijack.
No, of course.
You all have kids and you teach them very well. As far as I can tell, you're obviously very well versed on teaching. I think above average. How do you? To what extent do you think that this next generation always being taught by their parents in school? Do you have any idea?
Well, it makes me a bit emotional, actually, when you ask it, because I'm in school sometimes, and I'm shocked by how diversity and inclusion is not included in our education. It's in the small things. In Dutch, like, give me the skin color pencil. What skin color? Yeah, my skin color. Teachers say this. The books that are being read, also the role models that they see. I read about a research where I believe 5,000 children were asked to draw a scientist, and only 5 of them drew a woman. Like, I think that parents have a really important role to play. And thank you for saying that we are doing so well. That's really nice to hear. We're trying. I will try my best, and I'm sure you do too. Yeah, but I think that in education there should be way more awareness for this topic. Yeah, echt waar. That's my feeling. Not. Yeah, I'm curious to know.
I also see this at schools of my kids, but also in social media. It's not just education at school or other parents. I think that you're right, that we are above average conscious. And unfortunately, there are a lot of parents who do not involve in the subject or anything. They don't do anything about it. So it's a shame. Yeah, it is.
But I do have trust in our kids. I must also say that, like, to give it a positive vibe as well. Also, when you see the younger generations, and when it comes to gender expression, I think they're way more ahead than, like, we're old school, man. So I also, I have a big trust in the generations to come. Yeah, true that.
Any more questions?
We're here at a big corporate today, of course. And the public is a bit divided on whether or not pushing for women in the board is actually serving the cause. You know, the 3 women on the board rule. So I was wondering how you guys feel about that.
Good question indeed. For me, it's not. It's a means to an end. I think that's the way it was approached. Because as a legal counsel, I know the rules and where it came from. So it came for a reason, because how we started off the whole journey as a society. Think, hey, we have to fix something. Well, let's fix the number. I put it very short now. But that's obviously not the solution for everything. Does it contribute? Yes, it does. I think it does, because and you can have a debate whether you should formalize it or not, and that's the ongoing debate. I would say. But it does help again in the awareness of changing the board dynamics and realizing that it does make a difference how your board is composed, and that it's. If you want to change that, you have to make your pipeline in order. Have to make sure you have your succession in order. Give females give women equal opportunities to men, and not only women, but we can fill in a lot of things there. And only if you have that very diverse pipeline succession planning, then the ultimate conclusion will be that you will have a more filled and diverse workspace, including board. So I forgot about the specific question. Does it answer your question? Yeah.
Any more questions? Then I'm closing this event. I want to thank you very much for all the insights and answers today. And it felt amazing. I loved having you here. And thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.